I'm a chameleon, yeah.
I have half the brain that you do.
I did it for The Rock.
Oh my God!
The Most Crucial Podcast presents Crucial Squared Circle, the most crucial wrestling podcast with Mark Franchise and Davison Sarai.
A little bit of the bubbly.
And that's the bottom line. The Stone Cold said so.
Yeah, welcome back to the Crucial Squared Circle. Mark Franchise, it is 104.9 The Edge's ultimate wrestling podcast, joined once again by my lovely co-hosts, Davison, Sarai, and T.
Happy podcast, Franchise.
Yay, happy podcast day.
Happy podcast day.
It's not actually officially podcast day, but it is for us.
Well, that's a real thing?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there's a national day for everything now.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a Tuesday every week also.
What is that? I never heard of a Tuesday.
We'll put that here.
You heard it here first, folks. There's a day in the week called Tuesday. You're welcome. $5. Anyway, we're going to get into some catching up from everything that's kind of happened the last week in the world of professional wrestling. First off, right out the gate, talking about CM Punk's return to Fox Network.
Finally.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
He showed up on a broadcast. What was the name of the show that he came up on?
Oh, God.
It was Backstage?
Yeah, it's the new show run by Renee Young. It's called WWE Backstage. It's on a Fox, I don't know, second or third tier channel, FS1.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what time it airs. It's late at night. It's like 11 p.m. or midnight on like a third-rate channel.
I think it's after SmackDown. Maybe.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's after SmackDown because I think that's what their intention was for folks to like jump over there. But
Oh,
I don't
really?
think that's what happened. I mean, that was also where they had SmackDown a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
no
right.
one watched it.
Yeah. That was the one where AEW actually counter-programmed them and
Yes.
beat them yet again.
Yep.
But so here's the big news, and I was kind of writing a couple notes down. I knew what I wanted to talk about, but it was funny actually writing it down. So my bullet points were Punk set the world on fire in 2011, and we had talked either last time or the time before about the pipe bomb promo.
Yeah.
And how he just turned everything upside down. Became the hottest thing in the entire industry. We also talked about how Stone Cold only made it at the top for maybe 3 or 4 years, tops. Punk was the same. He was out of the company by 14.
Yeah.
So we're talking 5 years away from wrestling. And in that time, we've had constant CM Punk chants, almost, I don't know, way more than half the shows I've seen.
Yeah.
Every show, I'd say.
Like crowds trying to derail the shows.
Basically, because give us what we want.
Right. So I was just kind of like free and over here, and I'm like, okay, so let's add up the size of those crowds and the size of the pay-per-views, and let's take a guesstimate of how many times a year that happened.
Yeah.
I'd say it's safe to say that over 1 million people have participated in those chants at this point.
Very easily.
He debuted in front of 49,000 people
Wow.
on TV after 5 years away.
Say that again, please. I'm sorry. You said 49,000.
49,000. Now, when you get a 1-point rating on TV, doesn't that come out to approximately 900,000 to 1 million viewers?
Yeah, exactly. Each share, in radio at least, each share is a percentage. But when it comes to like the Nielsen ratings for television, normally it's 1 point something is 1 point million.
Yeah, and
So.
we know that they've been scrambling because during the heyday of 97 through 2001 or so, 95 through 2000, wasn't Raw hitting up around 6 and 7 ratings?
Yeah, they were. But I mean, just lately they've been rumbling, stumbling, fumbling. They're just tripping over their own shoelaces lately. And, just as a fan of wrestling, you got a lot of people who are very passionate about wrestling. I am more of a low-key wrestling fan where I'm like, I used to be crazy about it. Now I take a step back and I look at it for what it is. I'm not jaded by passions about favorite wrestlers and all that stuff. But now that I've been getting more into it lately, it's starting to happen again. Now, again, what does it appeal to? Who does it appeal to?
Yeah.
What kind of fan are you? Ratings have been dipping.
Right.
Big time.
And we know that Vince, I mean, I don't know who knows, but they keep setting these goalposts for what they want to maintain in terms of viewership. And for the longest, it was like, okay, as long as Raw never dips below a 3 rating, we'll be fine.
We'll be fine.
Right.
And then for a couple of years, it was more like 2. I'm like, okay, fine. As long as it doesn't go underneath 2, we're going to do great. And then it started hitting the high 1s, and that's when they really started to freak out. Then AEW comes along hitting about a 1. So there's all these numbers going around. I'm basically getting down to say that 49,000 people is about a 16th of a share.
49,000? Yeah,
I don't
roughly.
know. I can't do that math, but it's
Right.
not great. So it's just so weird. I'm trying to make sense of it because, like, Punk was always a little bit of a reluctant celebrity.
Right.
And part of me almost wonders if he would prefer, like, okay, fine, I'm back. And I don't give a fuck if anybody ever even sees it. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I'm curious what he's going to do, honestly. Because, you know, we were talking about this. He's got to deal with Fox. And I don't think WWE would be stupid enough to let CM Punk wrestle for any other company while also remaining under contract for Fox. I think they would keep a very close eye on what he's doing. Just the fact that he came on to a WWE show,
related show.
show, and came back to his entrance music was enough.
Unlit. They didn't have a light on the man.
That was hilarious. His one big comeback line, he's in the dark.
He's in the darkness.
You don't even see his face.
I thought you were saying, like, when something's exciting, it's lit. And this was decidedly unlit.
Decidedly
It was not too lit, fam. You know?
And I mean,
It wasn't that lit.
there'd been so much conjecture on the internet for such a long time about it happening. I mean, I am a huge CM Punk fan. I even have one of those stupid, like, 6-inch figures
Nice.
in my living room. It's like the only wrestling toy I have. I used to have Mankind. I don't know where it went. But so I've been dying for this moment. And then when it did, it just seemed so anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was. I was just like, oh, he's there. And he walked out, and he's like, you know, he kind of did an homage to Rowdy Roddy Piper. And
Oh, yeah,
it was
it's just,
like,
just when they think they know the...
yeah, just when they think they have all the answers, I change the culture, is what he said.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Piper would say, I changed the questions. But it was more of just the fact that it was like, neat. You know, it was like there was nothing to it, like, oh my God. And, you know, the internet, obviously, I think, like I said, I think people really want to be excited about something. And they also really want things to fail, and they want things to go bad. So when you have people when they've already made up their mind, there's no changing it. That's why I got into an argument the other day with this guy. Not really an argument, but I asked
He
him.
ended on the ground.
He was
He ended
making
on the
fun
ground.
of the potato sacking that Jericho did to Cody.
Oh, that was
on
awesome.
The last Dynamite. And it was just, you know, they're human beings, you know, and they just used that to.
Didn't look like a human being. Looked like a body bag full
Yeah,
of rocks.
like a freaking sack of potatoes. And they were basically using that to rip on All Elite and like, oh, they suck. And I'm like, yeah, because that's never happened in WWE before. And they basically said, no, he was an idiot for doing that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, somebody didn't clearly watch the match. And he's like, yeah, I did. It put me to sleep. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, excellent storytelling for once in forever.
Yeah.
Somebody is really good at storytelling. And I asked him, I was like, wow. And I was like, are you even a fan? And he's like, not really. And he's like, I knew they were going to be trash to begin with. And I was like, then you already decided before the match even happened that it was going to suck in your mind. Mm-hmm. So there is no changing somebody with that kind of philosophy. That's why I can't stand fans like that. Because if you go into something with a preconceived notion that it's going to be terrible, you're already not even giving it a fair chance. You're already sending that match into your mind with a disadvantage.
I just don't understand even watching at that point.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Right,
also,
right.
Also, I mean, if you're going to talk shit about that being boring and you're watching AEW, I mean, that is not the norm for AEW style. It is slower. It's more methodical. A lot of us would say it's better just because it seems a little bit more planned out. Seems to have more dynamics in that match style. But it makes me wonder, like, if that was boring, does that mean that he tunes in for the lightning speed stuff? But a person with that kind of attitude has been kind of shitting on the AEW product for being too scattershot and too fast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just, it seems like there's an impossible standard for some folks, and I just keep coming back to, then watch something else, man.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
have to suffer through this thing.
It was just unfortunate, though, because, like I said, I think CM Punk, not to take anything away from WWE or anything, because they could have made it even more dramatic. Like, here's the thing. My gut tells me he's showing up to Survivor Series. It's in Chicago. He's back with Fox. they could work out a deal where he at least does something, shows up, gets the crowd to pop. The crowd's going to go crazy when he does, because my gut, like I said, my gut's telling me he's going to show up.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you just save his return for that then, and absolutely blow people's minds? Then potentially think of it this way: the internet would explode if he showed it up at Survivor Series and did something.
Oh, absolutely.
Announced especially.
Then what's going to happen tomorrow on Raw? That's how it used to work. That's what the excitement used to be. Now we got to see what happens tomorrow, because maybe he'll be there. Who knows?
Did he show up on SmackDown? Does anybody like?
No, it was just that one show. It was just backstage. So now if he shows up, it's almost expected that he's going to show up at Survivor Series. And if he doesn't, that's even worse, you know?
Well, it kind of reminds me, though, of that StarCast situation, which was going on at the same time as, was it the second All Out?
Well, it was a
or
Double
All
or
In,
Nothing.
I mean? It was Double or Nothing. There you go.
Yeah, it was the last Double or Nothing.
Yeah. And everybody was just so convinced, because he wasn't just in the same town. He was basically in the same building.
He was in the same building and stayed at the hotel across the street or whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he didn't show up. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm over here thinking, like I said a couple minutes ago, would he be the one to come back and just be like, I don't want the attention? Like, that seems weird.
Right.
However, did either of the two of you hear about that run-in he did during an Ace Steel match at this tiny little indie show a handful of months ago?
Wasn't he masked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the people were like, we can't prove it's him. Like, how many people have that stupid-looking body type?
Right.
That collection of tattoos and does a go to sleep that sloppily. Like, it was clearly him.
Right.
And that was in front of like 70 people or something. Like, it just seems like he's conquered it. You know, he definitely conquered wrestling at the time.
Yeah.
He did reshape it. Like, let's remember, without a Punk, there's no Daniel Bryan in that company.
Right.
There's probably no Undisputed Era. There's probably no AJ Styles, Riddle, Keith Lee. Like,
Yeah.
go down the list. So he really did it. And I wonder if he's just like, you know, fuck it. I'll come back around, make some money, have some fun, but he doesn't care about getting invested, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he's got some anger still. I want to believe that he still has some anger. I want to believe that he met with Tony Khan, that everybody's all excited about, and had that conversation, and then signed right then and there. But then it tells everybody, nah, brah, I went in, they offered me a shit ton of money, and I didn't want it. I wanted to go back to WWE. I want that to be the story, but I don't want that to be the truth. I want him to have signed last week and then decided, oh, guess what? I'll show up on Fox, FS1. I'll have a quick conversation with Renee Young. Because she apparently was the one who knew before everyone else.
Yeah, nobody else on the show even knew he was coming up.
No one else knew, but apparently Renee Young, which, again...
Oh, are you talking about the fact that Moxley would be involved in that somehow?
I believe... I tell you, I have a strong belief that Renee Young and John Moxley talk. Okay, I feel like there's conversations between them,
I
and
certainly
I'm okay
hope so.
with that.
Yeah.
I strongly hope so. Yes, I would.
Yeah.
But
They're a young couple.
they should
Right.
But I do believe that there was some form of conversation, input, idea. But then again, Moxley claims and says that no one knew. Even his wife did not know until he flew out to do Double or Nothing that night. Like he said, I didn't tell anybody. I just went.
Who knows?
But anyhow, the idea that I'm thinking is that I'm hoping that he signed with AEW, does the FS1 show. Guess what? I changed the question or changed the culture and unlit, and then finds himself at WWE in Chicago or AEW in Chicago next week, because AEW on Wednesday is in Chicago right before Survivor Series. And they're also doing another show the following weekend in Chicago, or the following Wednesday in Chicago.
Right.
It's in Joliet. So 2 weekends, 3 weeks, or for 2 weekends straight, there are 3 different shows in Chicago related to wrestling in some fashion.
Yeah.
And then also with the takeover. So if he shows up on NXT and challenges Balor, cool, great, wonderful, dandy. However, I was not excited when I saw him. I saw it. I looked at it. I was like, hey, great, wonderful, dandy. He's back, but I want him to still get back for his vengeance on the marriage. The day that he was getting married, that whole pink slip.
Right. Why go back to that company when they clearly were fucking with them all that time? That was the other part that got me.
Yeah, and then the other side of that same coin with me is that, well, the same side, not the other side, but the same side of that coin is, I look at him and I'm thinking, dude, you don't care. like you just said a little bit ago, you don't care. 49,000 people? You got to care a little. You were pissed off for 5 years enough to know to everyone else on the face of the earth about wrestling. You got to be upset in some way. You got to still care a little bit.
If he shows up on All Elite, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit later when we get into the topic too of Full Gear, but that would in turn, I think, take what some people are saying on that Wrestling Fans page on Facebook, take AEW to the next level, where they're saying, some people are saying they need another big star. And
veteran.
I, on one hand, I agree to that to a certain extent. If you can get a big name without it looking like you're stealing talent, like WCW used to do, like a desperation move to sign somebody, I'm all in favor. The idea is it's got to be done the right way. And I think CM Punk coming out on Fox on a WWE show and then showing up on All Elite because he's a contracted wrestler is just about as attitude era move as you can get.
It's like that Lex Luger move. Who was a douche,
like the Lex
by
Luger
the
move.
way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, within 24
Rick
hours.
Rude as well.
Yeah.
Rick Rude was on a
did it
taping
too.
of Raw.
Yes, he did.
It was a taping of Raw, and he came out live on Nitro. And boy, what a difference 24 hours can make. And man, was that a slap in the dick. And
so good.
That is what and I'll get into it a little bit when we get into Full Gear as well. But I think Punk doing that would bring excitement to his return. I feel like
because there's none.
It's nothing. It's nothing against CM Punk. It's just creative. WWE has a very lame creative department right now.
Well, even if he was to show up on the show, they would script him to hell, so he is trapped in a box. I mean, that's the excitement that I had when what's his name, Eric Bischoff, the cool cat daddy with the 83 weeks. If he was came back to SmackDown, I was like, all right. Let's see what's going on here. I'm intrigued. I am interested. Let's see what you got. And you're on a new network? That's something to chew on. Same thing with the idea of Raw being in the hands of the great manager.
Heyman.
What's his name?
Paul
Heyman,
Heyman,
Yeah.
Paul Heyman. So that excitement was there for the moment. But it disappeared very quickly because of the box that they keep putting these people in. What's his name's going to be out of there soon, too, after SmackDown fails consistently as it has been.
I'm sure.
I'm not trying to be negative or mean. Well, I'm just trying to be truthful.
No, but they've made it pretty clear. JR even said it. He was pretty confident. Like, after Bischoff got fired, he said, I'm not remotely surprised. And I always had the impression he was brought in as more of a flak jacket than actual talent. They knew that their shit was sinking before they ever even got onto Fox. And we had talked about that, bringing a broken product over. So it made sense. They can tell their shareholders, well, we had this executive producer and he wasn't manufacturing for us, so we got rid of him. It wasn't even a real fix. It was like they just put in a cog that they were going to remove right away.
And I look at what AEW is doing with the Rock and Roll Express, I'm not going to try to sit there and
see that flippy do?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Hashtag hip destroyer.
Hip destroyer. But here's the thing. Those guys are in their spry age. They're still willing to take big bumps.
I mean, you might as well go. If you're going to go out in a mat.
Well, dude jumped out of the ring through the ropes. You're like,
Is that what he did?
What are you doing? That's literally a suicide dive. That is not only the technical term, that is literally what you're attempting right now.
I'm just going to push ever so lightly against your choice of words, jumped out of the ring.
Leaped.
I'm going to say he ran as fast as he could possibly run, and just momentum did the rest for him.
Inertia.
Fell forward.
I still don't want to fight him, though.
Regardless,
I don't want to fight
you've got guys in their age still taking bumps and getting the crowd to pop.
Yeah.
And they're doing it for the younger guys in the Federation.
Yep.
But literally, just look at, I don't know, man. When The Rock comes back and I see what he did. Don't get me wrong, I love The Rock. He's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. And I see what he was doing for the man. But, man, crushing your top heel to put over the the wrestler who's probably one of the most over wrestlers in the Federation right now, it seems very pointless to me.
And if that was their intent, I don't feel like it did it. I don't feel like Becky
That
Lynch
didn't
came
make
out any
anything.
better.
That
was
didn't
just
do anything.
It was
a
just
spot.
putting
It was a spot. Thank you.
just putting
And-
more focus on The Rock already, which he is not a product. He's already done it.
Yeah.
Like
The most successful
it
man
does
in the
is
universe.
people
Okay?
wanted to see him.
Like,
People wanted to see him for a week, and they did, and then they lost 1 million viewers when he wasn't there the next week. Like
that's what it is, and it's there's so much focus on winning the weekly battle, and it's like, nah, man. All Elite is doing what they know, doing what they know how to do. They're not competing with anybody. And wrestling fans don't know how to grasp that. They think that they're trying to beat them. And they'll even say, we're doing our best to be number one.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they're necessarily competing. It's just they're trying to offer a different product.
And Jericho jumped onto a radio show a little bit ago, or not a radio show, a sports network show. I believe it was like Sports Center or something, like an interview.
Oh, yeah, with the NFL. Was that with the Shaquille O'Neal?
No, I didn't see
was
that
in
one.
the wrestling
he was actually
ring?
in a ring with some of those
With
guys.
Shaquille
Yeah.
O'Neal and Charles Barkley.
I think I know the interview. I know the interview you're talking
Gotcha.
about. Though.
Well, yeah. I didn't know about him fighting Shaquille O'Neal. I'm interested in the Shaq Fu moves, but when it comes down to
Don't be.
the interview piece, that was something that I enjoy Jericho as a whole and in general, and always will,
Yeah.
always have. And I find that his interview brought to light, straightforward. We're not competing against anybody. We're swimming our own race, and just by happenstance, they're behind us. Oh well, sorry for you. But I'm going to keep swimming the way I need to swim because that's what I need to do. And he was holding the title with him because La Champion always carries that title.
Right.
And
Now he does.
Yeah, now, hey. He has it.
Right.
But it brought to it that level of. I guess what I'm saying is that when I watched an interview with a WWE wrestler, when Bray Wyatt was doing a newscast when they were a couple months ago at somewhere in some way, shape, or form, right before Hell in a Cell, and he was doing a newscast and doing a quick interview with somebody, and it seemed again so playful and off, and it wasn't. It was a. They were looking at the wrestler as a showman or as a show, and I don't really, not as an athlete. And
Right.
And that was something that I guess bothered me.
Like an actor almost.
Yeah, it was
Like they weren't treating him like the athlete that he is.
They weren't seeing the two sides of that person, the duality of a wrestler. The
Right.
duality is that showmanship, yes, but also I am an athlete. I am impactful in a variety of different ways, and that was something that was missing from that interview, and that was something that I liked with the Talking Smack show a long while back when Renee Young and Daniel Bryan were doing that.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that show because and I mean, I only saw a handful of episodes, but again, I enjoyed it. I was one of the viewers that watched it every now and again. Sorry, Vince, I was one of them. But it was something that was that portrayed the wrestler in a way that got you to believe into the story and push you further into the athleticism of the individual and prove to them they were something to contend with.
And the character. There's
And the
nothing wrong.
character.
There's nothing wrong with
Not
peeking,
just the character.
There's nothing wrong with peeking behind the curtain. When wrestlers can come out and say, "Yeah, we're real people. This is what we do for a living, though.
Mm-hmm.
This is my career. This is who I am. This is what it's all about, and I'm gonna take it to whoever." And you can still be in character. You don't have to be 100%. You're not about to step in the ring, but you can still be in character. You can still be who you are. And when they separate that, when they go, no, they're not a wrestler right now. Now they're just somebody else. Now,
Yeah.
like you said, playful. It kind of makes the whole thing seem disingenuous.
Like makes it silly.
Like, how am I supposed to have theater of the mind now?
You know who I never saw do that, and I think for really good reason. You never saw the Undertaker show up on stuff being Mark, like
Right.
ever.
Yep.
And now,
And the fact that they're
Who's
doing it
Mark?
with Bray already.
yeah. Well, and now now they've got the new Stone Cold podcast, which is not even a podcast. It's like an interview series that they're doing. I don't know if you heard about this.
I heard it was gonna happen. Yeah.
It's his first guest is the Undertaker as Mark Calloway.
Ah.
And he does if you've never heard Mark Calloway talk, it's not anywhere close to what the Undertaker
No.
talking sounds.
He sounds like an old man.
And they're just sitting down there talking about his entire career, and it's like, how does the Undertaker come back after that, though? How can you
That's the streak breaker.
realistically?
That's the streak breaker right there. 'Cause
Right.
Again, you're taking us out, as you said, out of the theater, and it's real to me. It's still real.
Yeah.
I want to believe.
Damn it.
absolutely
Damn it.
can be real.
You know, Jericho is a turned up version of himself. That was what Stone Cold always said. Take yourself, turn it up to 50.
Right.
The Undertaker is not a turned up version of Mark, nor is The Fiend a turned up version of Bray.
Right.
But as soon as you do this kind of thing, that's what you're saying. And it's like, those are those special characters. That's your lightning in a bottle. You wait for those to come around. Like people say that, you know, The Undertaker was a once in a lifetime. I think we can now say he was once in about a 3 generation or so wrestler. And I've said before, I think that Bray perfectly moves into that same space
Yeah.
if they treat him appropriately. And so far, it hasn't been too convincing that they're going to.
What's up with these red lights? I still don't understand that. I mean, I get the premise. I get the cool, the mysticism. I'm all about that. But does it have to last the whole damn match? I don't understand it. I've seen maybe 2 matches where the red lights were on. And it
Right.
annoyed the hell out of me because I can't see shit.
That was similar to what they did with Kane, too.
Yeah.
Kane would do that.
It's supposed to give
Every
it that.
match?
First thing.
Well, not during the match. It was like the lead into
I think
the match, right?
back in the early days, actually, right when Kane was wrestling, for the first few months or so, they had the red lights out.
I didn't know that.
But it didn't last very long. But yeah, again, it's just you can only take so much away from these people before, like I said, the product becomes disingenuous.
Yeah.
Let me believe in something. When you're taking everything away from me to believe, it's hard to get me back into the mindset of, okay, theater, okay, wrestling. Because you're like, no, I just saw this guy giggling with puppies on Good Morning America.
Right.
And now he's Billy Badass.
They call
Yeah.
it suspension of disbelief
Now
for
he's
a
supposed
reason.
to be a monster. You know, and it's like, no.
Well, you know what? I want to just touch on one more quick thing, and I think it's a good segue into the pay-per-view anyway. People still talk about Punk joining AEW, and franchise, you said it a couple minutes ago, you said what they need is one more big star, and
Yeah.
then Punk would make sense. And then a little bit later, and everybody said this too, like they're not trying to compete, they're just trying to do their own thing. But I think that when we say they need a person, that's because we're having some preconceived notion of what we think they need to be doing. And in doing
Right.
that, I think that we're still saying if they want to step up to the next level or if they want whatever it is, but they're doing what they want. They've said it on repeat. They're already doing it. They have faith in the product. And the way it sounds, they're not worried about reaching 3 or 5 or 10 in ratings.
Right.
They're just already doing it. So I don't know. I just think that it's important to remind, even as fans, let's keep our hands off and just watch them do what it is they do. You know.
Right.
They've
Exactly.
been doing a pretty great job, so far of kind of just carving out their own niche. So.
Yeah, I support and agree with that. And I think the bar for the TNT that's set well in advance was like 500,000. They were like, hey,
Oh yeah.
if we can get some people to watch, that'd be great.
Yeah, they've been crushing that.
Yeah, they've been crushing that. And I think, the other side of that also is like Tony Khan, I guess at TNT was like, hey, we'll put it on and we got a billionaire financing it. So
Right.
if we get 500,000, cool, but we're still getting our checks.
It's a pretty big safety net.
That's
yeah.
a pretty big
Why
safety
not?
net.
Well, I still have yet to see Double or Nothing because I hadn't yet had the opportunity to see the pay-per-view. And at the time as well, this was before Dynamite aired on television. As soon as Dynamite became a product on TV, that's when I was like, okay, this is something new. I want to see what it has to offer me. So far, I would give Dynamite a good 7.5 out of 10. At times, 8 out of 10 in terms of quality of matches, product. There are some things that I haven't agreed with, some things that they did that I wasn't 100% behind, but you're never going to win somebody over 100% unless you're completely blinded by the fact that it's something new. That being said, though, they've got some of the best talent in the world on their, not only on their Wednesday night show, but the pay-per-view that they put together was a solid 8 out of 10. I was really impressed with that whole event. There was a few matches that were, obviously a little bit outshined the rest of them, but
Which pay-per-view are you talking about? This last one? Full Gear?
Full Gear.
Oh, okay.
I think if we're gonna get into it, again, Pac is such a phenomenal athlete.
Oh,
That
man.
guy, I've gotten so much more respect for him since he joined All Elite and left WWE. And again, when we were talking about a couple minutes ago about CM Punk, if he showed up on All Elite and how much attitude that would show, the first thing I really want to get into is the unsanctioned match. Which,
Start
we're
at
talking
the end and
about.
work our way backwards. What's up?
Yeah, because
That's how
let's
I eat
just
my pizza.
let's just call it out for what it is. I mean, there's a reason that match was unsanctioned, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, okay, well now that they had this match, people are gonna criticize Moxley if he doesn't stay hardcore and all this other stuff." And I'm like, no, that is why it was an unsanctioned match, because it technically does not count. Therefore, there is a reason that they're going into this match. There's a reason he's doing this against the opponent he's doing it against. And again, I don't think there's any better person to work with right now than Kenny Omega.
Oh, God. Well, it's just another example of the old guard looking at the new stuff and pretending it's all shit. Think about the early 80s. You almost never saw it, but sometimes people in a blood feud would have a dog collar match.
Right.
Where they're attached by a chain.
Yep.
If that happened once every 2 years, you were lucky. It was very rare.
Right.
They used to have cage matches to end long-term, bloody, violent feuds. Didn't happen very often. It was a special event. Hell in a Cell came along. That was supposed to be a special event, and then it got all watered down. So, I mean, this is just another example. These guys have been at each other's throats since the inception of the company.
Yep.
It's been great, slow build. And you just gave them the 2019 blow-off that's kind of the equivalent of the stuff I just mentioned. And all of a sudden, everybody's freaking out.
And you can tell who is and isn't watching, because I've seen arguments on that page, too, where people are like, I just don't understand why they're wrestling each other. There's, no backstory or anything. I'm like, they've been building this for the last few months.
Yeah, I've been seeing a tear between folks who've only been watching the TV show and not the pay-per-views.
Right.
And the people who've seen everything.
Mm.
And the people who aren't watching the pay-per-views are missing out on that build, or are missing out on that component. They don't understand their relationship or why they're angry at each other,
Right.
because they've only seen them interact with each other at those pay-per-views. But if you've seen everything, then it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
That's one of the few critiques of the company that I will wholeheartedly agree with, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you put it the way you did. I mean, it was this note, I'm a big fan of the company. So since the first pay-per-view, I've seen everything they've done. I've seen every dark, I've seen every TV show, seen every pay-per-view. I watch a lot of the Being the Elite stuff that also fills in some gaps.
Right.
But when they started Dynamite, they did start it either assuming that everybody had been doing the same as me,
Yeah.
or it's just thinking that people would get up to speed. And then the two examples I can think of where that may cost them is the way people are responding to this match.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we'll get to it, but holy shit, the turn, MJF turning finally on Cody, and how hot that was.
Oh,
Yeah.
the heat.
We knew that, but a lot of people, if they were just tuning in for the last 5 weeks,
Right.
they don't understand the significance of that being as big a deal as it truly is. So
Right,
they could do
exactly.
a little bit better job with that. But now that we're rolling into it, if you're watching the show now, the details are getting wrapped in. So, but it was just that first maybe couple months of the company that people were missing out on.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the Sizzler. That was some heat.
No.
For MJF, straight up.
I think there's an art form to hardcore matches, and I think Moxley and Kenny Omega did a great job of telling the story with their bodies and slowly progressing the match, making things more hardcore as it went along.
Yeah.
And they did it perfectly. And by the time they made it back to the ring after they crashed through the freaking All Elite plexiglass,
That was so good.
was sick. When they finally made it back to the ring, the one thing that I will say that, that where these fans lose me is when Moxley pulled up and exposed the ring for what it is, steel and wood.
Yeah.
That is something that has never been done before. As far as I know, I've never seen.
Oh, I've actually seen it the
Have
last
you?
year
Okay.
or so. Yeah.
I was gonna say I've never seen somebody pull the very thin foam padding.
It may have even been in WWE or NXT.
Was it?
I can't remember what it was, but
Yeah, I think I've seen it in NXT, or if not in WWE.
it was pretty similar. Though it was right in the corner. Yeah, like they were.
Regardless, just the fact that they were able to.
Oh, that's not memory foam.
I mean, the fact that they were willing to take
no
bumps.
memory foam.
That's no memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that they were willing to take bumps on just some straight wood.
Yeah. The pine board straight up.
Not even
And-
just bumps, but fucking Omega doing that Phoenix splash.
Oh yeah.
Doing a 450 spin and then landing face first.
Face first
Yeah,
right
oh.
into wood.
I don't know how you
Bam.
protect yourself from that mess. Holy crap.
Apparently, Cody.
And ouch.
Zing.
I think they did a really good job of planning everything out, figuring out, just really making that match the most it could be. And
I agree, and I
think they pulled it
that's-
off.
It built
Yeah.
to a good crescendo for sure.
It definitely did build, and I agree with both of you on that. And when it comes down to wrestling, that's something that I do appreciate about it, is that that show captured a lot of aspects of wrestling that that I fell in love with wrestling for. The showmanship and the pageantry, and a lot of that art is there. The rest holds aren't there. The actual like with the match between the teacher and the student, and it was wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
Even though that was a bit of a lull in the show, with because of the build up right before of a lot of spots and whatnots.
Yeah.
And then there was a lull, and then that for that match there wasn't a lot of hype, but it was a good match. It was something that I enjoyed. But we were talking about that Moxley and that Omega, those two cats going hard at each other on that for a regular. How long was that
25
match?
to a half hour.
I thought it was closer to 40. I thought
Was
they
it?
said
It could have
around
been
35, 38.
Yeah.
It went a bit. I mean, it hit a point where I was like, man, I want to go to bed, but dude, y'all are killing it.
Right.
But again, it had a lot of dynamics to that match, and I do hope that it is a once in a lifetime situation. Maybe not once in a lifetime. I apologize, but once every couple years. I like this idea of having these things that they build up to, that they can't squelch this fire unless they take the rule book and throw it out the window and handle each other in the ring. And jumping to the idea of that foam pad, my God, I didn't realize it was that thin all night.
Oh, yeah.
Because thinking about that in comparison to some other rings I've seen, you're stepping on a bed in the ring sometimes where you've got 3, 4, 5 inches, and you can see their feet digging into it, and you can see their difference. Like everybody's wearing heels. That's how deep the ring is. But with this one, no, 1 inch, maybe 2.
Right.
Then straight, 2x6 pine wood boards that these guys are taking bumps on.
Yeah.
Power to them. Power to them.
I'm not going to pretend that I'm some huge fan of ultra-violent stuff. I've certainly seen it because I like to, I'm a huge fan. I'm pretty well-rounded in the stuff I watch. So I've been aware of CZW and their Cage of Death series every year. They have the Tournament of Death every year, which Moxley's been in, a handful of times from way back when. And those are those matches where, I don't even think they have ropes on the ring. I think it's barbed wire.
Oh yeah, the game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys are out of their minds.
The
crazy.
boards full of nails, light tubes everywhere, you name it.
Yeah.
So this was absolutely, to me, like, I can't believe. I can believe what I was seeing because I've seen it all before.
Right.
But seeing it in that light, in front of that huge crowd, with these global superstars, to see Moxley elbow crawling through a bag of broken glass, for Christ's sake.
That was hard. Freaking core.
That one, the suplex into that giant nest of barbed wire. Now.
And the chain too.
Oh God, the chain across the teeth, the big gold chain.
And just the back body drop onto the chain.
Yeah. How funny was that it was a gold chain, by the way?
Right.
Big giant gold chain. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I thought about that backdrop on that pile of chain. That must have been horrible.
That's not good. Nothing about that is good. It's again, they took. You had the climax of the world title match, and then they were able to, in one instance, after there's so much hype around what happened, to really just go, okay, everybody, that was the end. Now this is happening.
Like a standalone
It
event
was so
here.
weird. It's very hard to do that. Think of like WrestleMania 18, The Rock versus Hulk Hogan.
Oh God,
How
yeah.
that basically should have been the end of the night. That's what everyone wanted to see.
Was that
Afterwards,
when Jericho and Triple H had to wrestle in the main event?
Yeah, and Jericho was like begging them to like, please go on last, and they were like, no, dude, you're wrestling for the world title. That's got to be the main event. And they're like, But and they tried. They went out there and they had a great match, but people were so spent by the end of the Rock and Hogan match that they just couldn't. They couldn't. All the real, true, raw emotion was gone. Now, I would never compare Cody and Jericho to Rock and Hogan, but still, it's the same sense of you've got the big showdown. This is for the world title, you know.
It was definitely epic. It might have been on the same level, but you know what? You know what, though? I'm just thinking this makes a lot of sense. At that example of WrestleMania, I mean, you're right. Good Lord, the crowd for that Rock Hogan was just
electric,
ridiculous.
But
they were going standard wrestling match into basically standard wrestling match, right?
Right, exactly.
So you're making a direct comparison. Then we got Cody and Jericho, which was super epic in my book. But then you go into, I mean, there is no comparison to be made. And I don't mean quality. Exactly. I mean, this is apples and oranges.
Right.
Big time. So I think that helped too, a natural palate cleanser.
And smart that they waited to keep that as the main event. Because I don't think there would have been a following after that. Well, we really couldn't, considering everything they did, how they tore the place up.
Right.
You really couldn't recover from that. Like
he helped tear down the ring.
Like literally, he started the tear down for the boys.
You. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Fuck you for all the glass, but thanks for cutting the strings.
But but yeah, even like I said, I think overall the pay-per-view was a lot of fun. I love the tag team. I love the tag action. In All Elite, they had some really good tag teams.
God, that opening match between Proud and Powerful and I know. Yeah, let's just raise our hand. Does anybody in this room like that name for a tag team?
I don't know why they're called that. I like them being called by their last names.
Yeah, Ortiz and Santana.
Yeah, Santana, Ortiz and Santana.
Man, their match
Proud
against
and Powerful. I'm like. Yeah, and that's kind of a whack name.
Their match, I mean, I think they might be doing it. I can kind of see the logic because, you know, they've got Nyla Rose, they've got Sunny Kiss.
Yeah.
They're focusing heavily on the diversity component. And when you look at those two being LGBTQ characters, the idea of pride and power makes a whole hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I could see kind of applying that to like a minority tag team or something.
Right, exactly.
One way or the other, it doesn't sound particularly intimidating or.
No, but I think they do a good job of that in the ring, though.
Oh no,
they're
super
talented.
And
that was a killer match. Yeah.
Ortiz is slowly becoming one of my favorite wrestlers.
Yeah.
The dude that does the seal head drop.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So funny.
Pins you with his head on your chest.
That guy's hilarious.
Oh man.
I see Santana as a potential breakout at some point too. The bigger guys.
No doubt.
Great intensity. They both are great, movesets.
And I brought this up. This is probably the 5th time I've brought this up. But naturally, when it comes to just watching wrestling, and really, really having a guttural laugh about something, I think the Orange Cassidy spot on Dynamite this week.
Hold on.
The bathroom cameo?
Yes.
That was so awesome.
I don't think I've.
Yeah.
Just watching a product and being immersed in it, and I'm watching the, Proud and Powerful going up against the Young Bucks, and they're just battling on the back end. They're carrying on. Tony Schiavone's carrying on conversation. He's like, well, folks, when we get back, and you're just thinking you're just watching this, and then all of a sudden he throws one of the Bucks through the door, and there's Orange Cassidy leaning up again, and like everybody just stops and starts laughing their ass off.
He's just doing the usual thing, standing there.
That is why I love All Elite, because they do so much off-the-wall, unexpected things during their show, during their pay-per-views. It's just stuff like that keeps it fun and exciting. And like nobody was expecting that.
No.
Nobody thought
to the TV up until that commercial break, because they went to a commercial break right after.
Exactly.
You know what was cool about that spot? I mean, obviously it was hilarious to see him standing there just alone in a small bathroom,
right,
staring
just
at the
waiting.
wall, just staring. But then for Santana, who's in the middle of a Pier 6 brawl, to take 4 seconds out of his day and be like, what the hell? That's super weird. He tiptoes to the door and like quietly closes it so as not to bother the pervert or whatever the hell he was implying.
He sold it perfectly.
And then went right back to fist fighting.
Right. He literally like stops, peers, and looks over his shoulder like,
Ugh.
what the hell is going on?
Anyway,
it's just we're gonna just forget this ever happened, and then just proceeds to get his ass whooped.
That was inspired. I love that.
Again, I haven't seen WWE do anything like that. That's literally just made me laugh my ass off in years.
Not
literally
on purpose.
years. I like I said, that's when people sit there and say All Elite has done nothing to offer what they promised us. I'm like, what are you talking about? When was the last time you saw something that funny in WWE? It's so random.
I will say, something that caught me off guard that I didn't think that I would like, but I did end up liking, was the 24/7 championship. That was something that caught my attention only because of Carmella and R-Truth.
That was pretty funny.
Enjoyed that so much. Because out of nowhere, I'm just glued to the TV like, well, what's going to happen now? But it was only then.
Right,
because of the spontaneity of it.
What's the dude's name that was the GM for 205 for the longest? The blonde guy?
Oh, Draco Malfoy?
Drake Maverick. There you go.
Oh my gosh.
I give him a lot of props too. I mean, he's a good wrestler. He was his what was his name? Spud the Rockstar, or Rockstar Spud for the longest when he was on the Indies.
I didn't know that. Yeah. I knew he was in the Indies right before. Yeah. Which again, somebody that we were all excited about when he got signed on for 205.
Yeah. He's like an 8-ounce cup full of 16 ounces of charisma.
Yeah.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, he's pretty fun. But yeah, I've been a Carmella mark for a long time too. I was one of the few people I knew who was stoked when she won Money in the Bank. I was stoked with her title run. I didn't see it as a career highlight to get paired up with career C-lister in WWE, R-Truth. But man.
Oh, I thought you were going to say James Ellsworth.
Well, that's a whole different situation.
Yeah. But hey, props to him, K-Quick.
Who
has lasted.
Yeah, true story.
Oh,
so anyway, we're getting way. Let's talk about MJF for a hot second.
Yeah.
How long is it going to be before he is the biggest thing in professional wrestling?
You know, that's what I'm trying to figure out where they're going to go with this. Because for all intents and purposes, he's a part of the inner circle now. Like,
is he?
That's what's kind of like, that's what I'm saying. For all intents and purposes.
It's fun. It's fun to speculate. It's fun to speculate right now.
Because they never did the Mega Powers handshake, so to speak.
They didn't.
But they hugged it out.
They agreed that Cody's the biggest prick in AEW.
Right. But how long until MJF is in a very unique situation where he was already kind of a heel, even though he was a face, and now he's a double heel.
Oh, yeah.
And how do you pit... The hard part is, how are you going to pit two heels against each other? And the only way I think you can do...
You mean he and Jericho?
Yeah. And here's the thing. Le Champion is, in my world, he's not a heel. He's an anti-heel. But he's still technically a heel.
Yeah.
I think the only way you do that is by not doing that. I think the only logical reason I can come up with that is I think MJF is definitely... he's going to be a headliner.
Oh, yeah.
For the world title, but not against Jericho.
No.
Now, I could see Jericho and Cody's rivalry continuing, but I could definitely see them pitting MJF and Jericho against each other eventually to get the belt off Jericho and then bring somebody else up to go up against MJF.
And I can see it, and I can see Jericho taking a face turn, then leaving MJF with the inner circle.
Very true.
Yeah, time soon. But
there's a lot of possibilities there, which I think if Jericho did that, again, this is a man of reinvention.
Yep.
If he did that, it would just be another.
Yep.
It would be another reinvention that would be even greater than where he's already at now.
And it doesn't take him 6 months to get a new version over like WWE. It takes him about 2 shows.
I think when it comes to reinvention of you, and I think it came naturally for The Rock, but Jericho and The Rock are probably two of the best heel turns of all time. They were able to adapt. With The Rock, it came naturally because he was starting to get more and more famous that eventually he was no longer The Rock of old where he was standing there all misty and everybody was hanging on to every single word and every movement he made, and he was always in slow motion and everything was calculated. Well, eventually he was just such hot shit that he was just way over the top because he could be, because he was The Rock and he was a millionaire and he was a superstar and a movie star. And he just totally played it off like that. But he's always been super genuine. That's the great thing about The Rock. But when he was like Hollywood Rock, it was even better because he just thought he was the greatest thing living.
I think you just said the word of why maybe MJF is such a huge deal. Yeah, he's a tremendous heel. And he's genuine.
He's
Right.
genuine.
That
Yes.
is not an act. That is him. I don't even know how much he's turned up.
I love what the hell's a hoovie? Google it, baby. And then he just kind of lifts his eyebrows like, okay. Like, whatever.
Man. How about Jericho saying, I have a feeling your parents were horny 25 years ago watching Nitro, and that's how, yeah. Dude.
Just setting him up. And like I said, I'm excited to see what happens there. I'm excited to see, you got to give these guys a chance. Like I said, you got to give this company time to bloom and to give these guys opportunities and not just take it away from them. When you think something isn't working, you got to let them do their own thing. And
Give them some room to breathe. Yeah.
exactly. Just let the company unfold a little bit before you sit there and judge everything. Like, just watch, enjoy it.
Yeah. We're
Don't-
6 weeks in. Yeah, about
Yeah,
6 weeks
6
in, and I've
weeks,
watched
come on.
every week, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it each and every time.
Yeah.
MLW. Jumping for a moment.
MLW is good.
Yeah, MJF was on MLW, and I believe that he was one of their tag team champions for a minute or something along those lines recently.
Yeah.
To the point in which I wonder as to whether or not his contract is up with them, to then be full time committed to AEW. Now I know he signed with AEW, and I know
Right.
that AEW allows for you to show up on other promotions and be a part of other promotions.
I think television is the deal breaker, though. I think if it's
Television's
a
the deal breaker.
televised show or a televised company, I
Yeah.
think that's when they're a no-go at this
Right,
point.
because Jericho's still performing, and that may just be nationally. Internationally, I think Jericho's about to perform on
Oh, right.
another Japanese
Yep,
federation.
It's true.
New
Because
Japan
Omega
Pro
just
Wrestling.
won the ML, the Mexican, I can't remember what the
AAA's.
CMLL. Or is
Oh.
it AAA? Either way, he won the world title from Ray Phoenix
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that's
very
AAA.
recently.
And-
so
and those-
international probably is the deal.
And those international federations respect the sport of wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
There's very little. In fact, if you actually took the time to watch it, you'd find it's almost reminiscent of the '80s in the sense of who these people are, who their characters are. It's very basic, and they do a really good job of storytelling with their bodies. They let the matches speak for themselves, and again, that's one of the reasons I like All Elite is because they do a very good job of that, and I think their commentating team supports that as well. I don't think there's any competition when it comes to All Elite's commentator team. It's reminiscent of the Attitude Era, but it's not even just the fact that it's the voices of the Attitude Era.
No.
It's the style. It's the way they call a match. It still has that nostalgic 80s feel to it where you're invested in the story of what you're watching.
There's an element of unpredictability that keeps it, I guess that's the word again, genuine. It feels more authentic.
Yeah.
And maybe
Tied
that,
to that.
maybe that goes back to the Jim Ross notion that we
Oh, I
talked
love
about.
him.
Where
Yeah.
he doesn't want. Yeah, I don't know if that's still the case, but he's been on records. I don't want to know who wins these
Right.
matches. I want to react.
Well, think of the call when MJF did the show. It's like, oh, you little bastard! Why'd you do that? Like, it was again another one of those classic Jim Ross calls. And he's like, he still got it.
He still got.
And-
I mean, when he was watching the teacher and student match with the women's championship, surprised out of nowhere when that happened,
Right.
and he was genuinely excited. Like, man, look at this! This is astounding, and he is all about it and all lost it. So yeah, he's genuine, and I got to bring up corny. Unfortunately, I listened to a comment that by him, and I do listen to him, and I do like what he has to say sometimes. But one of the things in which he mentioned was the heat that MJF got. Think about how much heat MJF would have gotten if there was not that lull. And I'm not anything against that match.
So that
because I enjoyed
continuous
that.
build-up, you
But
mean?
that continuous build-up.
I heard that same, and that did make a lot of sense.
It did, and I think the when I watched that beer get thrown at MJF
Oh, yeah.
at the top of the ramp, and then security coming out of the woodwork to grab that man.
Yeah.
Do you think that was real?
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be the perfect way to do a plant in 2019, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I
Make
mean,
it look like that and send people out
I-
running after people,
I-
drag
I
their
s-
asses out of the crowd. Who knows?
I
but
think
they-
it's genuine just mainly because of the way MJF reacted, where he seemed caught off guard by it, but unfazed. You know, where he's like, that's right. I just made you feel that kind of way.
Ah.
Feel every piece of the freaking deception.
Yeah.
You know, and just continue to walk out. But I also feel like also the fact that And maybe, but I think also the fact that they didn't hone in. Oh, he's getting ejected.
Yeah,
it was very much.
Just like
it was
off to the
focused
side.
on
Yep.
MJF,
Yeah.
but you saw the guy move in. That's why I think it was genuine. Because and think about the passions that All Elite is building up. I absolutely think it was genuine. I think that dude was seriously pissed off that he effed over Cody.
How
like
fun
that.
is it though to be a wrestling fan and know that somebody might legitimately piss you off enough to want to throw a thing at a wrestler?
Right.
I
Like,
paid $8 for this cup of beer. I'm going to throw it.
like
Yeah.
thank you for the experience, MJF. Holy crap.
Right, exactly. So, like I said, I'm excited to see where it goes and to see how they're going to build this up now and what's going to happen, because there's no doubt that MJF is going to eventually be put in the spot
Oh,
to be world champion.
I mean, he's so young. 23, 22?
Yeah,
It's
24.
he
something
would
like
be
that.
preposterous.
he
Yeah.
would be a great leader, and not take anything away from Jericho, but he would be a great leader of the Inner Circle.
Yeah.
Considering the fact that you've got, the perfect tag team combination you've got the sexy Spanish God as like the wacky off the wall character. You got Jack Hager, who doesn't wrestle, and he just stands there and interferes, and he'll
Stares off somewhere without blinking.
Yes, but you could see that in the sense of think of the Nation of Domination. Farouk was no business. He was just serious business out there.
He was no business.
He was,
Which is why The Rock got so
Yeah.
popular.
well, he was serious business out there, and when The Rock showed up, he was full of piss and vinegar, and he had that swagger to him.
Yeah.
And again, not to get too off topic, but one of the great all-time skits in the ring when The Rock gives all the guys in the Nation a bunch of 24-karat gold Rolexes, and then he gives Farouk a framed picture of The Rock without a shirt on with the IC title. The Farouk's like, what the F is this? Just like, and again, I look at it like, that's just a great, you could see the tensions building between them, and then boom, the Nation turns on him and starts kicking the ass, and then The Rock becomes the true leader of the Nation and takes the Nation to a new level. I think MJF could do that with the Inner Circle if that's the route they decide to take. It just seems very unlikely that you would have a personality like Jericho with an ego like MJF. It's very, I just don't think it's very logical or possible that those two could, on this path right now, coexist as co-leaders.
I like the idea of MJF having his own little side faction. I don't remember the name. Was it Warlow, that big dude that came through on the last episode
that's
of
right.
Dynamite? Wardlow?
Man bun?
Whatever, yeah.
Big scary man bun?
They had shown some promo videos for this guy way back. It might have been the first Dynamite, or it was pay-per-view.
Who is this guy? Yeah.
He's like 6'8", big muscular dude. Looks
Right.
like he's never been in a ring in his entire life. But so how cool would it be, though, to have the Inner Circle as the main kind of heel faction? And maybe sometimes they cooperate with MJF.
Right.
But he has his own little side thing. And they're like, I don't know. I think it'd be cool. You never really see that anymore. Like multiple factions running around.
That's true.
Especially heel factions.
It'll be interesting to see what they do. Like I said, I'm excited for the next couple of weeks, see what unfolds. And have they announced the next pay-per-view?
I want to say it's in January.
Is it?
It's usually, I think they do them quarterly now. It's like every 3 months or so.
That makes
Really?
sense.
I think so.
Huh.
It's either 2 or 3.
Well, it'd be like, I'm excited to see where they take it.
Yeah, and somebody broke this down, and it made a lot of sense. People are complaining about going back to the $50 price tag on a pay-per-view. But then somebody was like, okay, well, think about that $10 you pay for WWE. You may pay $10 a month, but are you getting a quality pay-per-view every month?
Right.
No, you are not. So maybe you watch NXT, but you could now watch it on Hulu for $10 a month as well. So you don't have to do both. So if you figure they do a pay-per-view every, I don't know, let's say it was every 2 months. That's 8 weeks. That breaks down into what? I mean, well, we're doing monthly, so it'd be $25 per. So if it was every 3 months, I think it came out to like $15, $16. I was like, for that quality, I cancel WWE in a heartbeat and just pay into that. I happen to do both, but
my subscription has been
it has been canceled for some time now, because I hate to say it, but I was like, all right, I'm not really feeling like watching old pay-per-views anymore. That's what I was using it for. I was watching wrestling documentaries and old pay-per-views.
Yeah, that's what I've been watching.
I
have it on in the background.
I didn't go. Yeah, I hate to say it, but it was all 80s and 90s stuff that I was watching. Yeah. Because again, the quality of the product changed drastically, and I figured at the time I was just like, okay, why do I have this? Like I've seen all this stuff before.
You know what super bums me out, and I'm hearing myself. I feel like I'm being a negative wrestling fan today, but I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for NXT to start utilizing all of their talent in the best possible way, and I feel like they're finally doing it. Like Riddle is one of my favorite people. Keith Lee is one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
Undisputed Era, they've got them running rampant over Raw and SmackDown. NXT's, I mean, they've had their ups and downs, mostly ups. I just feel like they're at a high. And I've been so jaded now by not just the product, but I feel like personally, I just want to spit in Vince's face most of the time for like, jerking me around for 40 fucking years and wasting my time. So I'm like, you know what? It sucks because I see the highlights. You know, we were watching the other night NXT like simultaneous with AEW, and I'm seeing the stuff happen that I've been dreaming of, and I kind of almost didn't care because it's attached to Vince. Like he's chased me off as a fan.
And it's hard too when you're really into another product.
Yeah.
Riddle needs to get some shoes. Just throwing that out there.
He's got shoes. He kicks them off.
Yeah.
They're flip-flops.
He is going through a stock of shoes on a regular basis.
But when he gets boots, will it even feel right anymore?
He came from the UFC where they fight barefoot. That's
right.
That's the deal.
That's unsafe. You're going to get a stub toe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know why people don't
worked for
just stop
Snuka.
on his foot.
Yeah, seriously.
He's got those Samoan feet. Even though he's not Samoan, WWE ruling, like anybody who's from an island, like, you're part of the Samoan family.
Yeah.
Tough feet, hard heads.
Yokozuna, where
Wrestling
you from?
science.
Hawaii? Okay, Japan, got it. Okay. Sure. Hawaii, Japan, same thing.
They should totally make a line of T-shirts and products for like the Samoan / Islander faction of wrestling, and just have all of the stuff say strong feet, hard heads.
Oh my gosh.
I'd buy it.
I'd buy that for $1.
Well, we wanted to talk about a little bit as well. It's one of the things that I just kind of thought of over the years, and don't really put together a list, but talk about a couple of people in general in wrestling history would be champions. And now this could be people who were never champion, who at least deserve to either have an intercontinental. It could be intercontinental champions who were never achieved the world heavyweight championship, even U.S. title in WCW that never gained the heavyweight championship.
They're like never nudes, but they're never champs.
Right, exactly. And I feel like there's a lot of wrestlers who were out there who you could see at one time maybe how they could become the top guy, but because of certain reasons, it was never in the cards. And there's a lot of people who are actually out there who were like that.
You know, and it was funny when you mentioned this as a topic. I thought, oh, this is really cool. Like, let me go back through my mental Rolodex, and then I actually had a pretty hard time. Especially, I mean, you know, way back in the day in the '80s, there were a lot of people who just flat out got screwed because of the generations they were wrestling in. You know,
Right.
like in the Hogan era, he was going to be the champ. Period.
Always.
And you had so many amazing people going through at the time who were just screwed because of the Hogan thing.
Yeah.
And then I feel like after that, they almost oversaturated the roster with title wins to the point where being the champ almost wasn't as big a deal anymore.
I
Yeah.
still feel that way.
They never had a guy, and I think maybe it was just because of the way the product changed, but they wanted to have the next Hogan, but they were never going to have the next Hogan because the industry was changing.
Sure.
And the workload was changing, and it was becoming harder, and especially after that court case in the 90s, Vince was in bad ways.
Yeah.
Vince was in real bad ways.
Oh, you know, I never even thought about that, but how much of that had to do with Bret Hart becoming the big focal point? Like, here,
Right.
there's a dude that clearly isn't doing steroids.
Right, exactly. But Bret
Let's make
Hart,
him the champ for a while.
but
Yeah.
Bret Hart is one of the best in-ring technicians of all
God,
time.
without
yeah.
a doubt, without
Like,
a doubt.
if you could take a guy, no offense to Sean Waltman, but as the 1-2-3 kid and convince me that he is about to win the world title, that's impressive. And that's not just, and not to say that's all on Bret, but a lot of that is just on Bret. And the fact that Sean Waltman was up to the challenge and was physically able to put on the show that was needed to convince.
You know, it's another great kind of version of that same feel. Do you remember the Elimination Chamber match. Daniel Bryan was a heel champion.
Yeah.
Do you remember the one where Santino Marella was the last opponent of his?
Oh, yeah.
I legit thought they were like going to cash in quick because he was pretty popular on the level of like Rusev Day.
Yeah.
I think Rusev could have very easily been a 2 or 3 month champ, just riding the wave of that popularity,
No doubt.
and then dropping it when it wore out.
Right.
It looked like Daniel Bryan was going to lose that night, and that's because he's kind of a modern version of, I mean, I would say better in most ways, personally, than the Hitman. And that might be a
makes a
very
lot of
unpopular opinion, but exact same skill set, makes everybody look like $1 million.
Yeah.
You know, easily one of the most talented technicians, like just well-rounded.
It was tough. Like I said, the everything kind of changed, and you know, they danced with Bret Hart being the champion for a little bit, and then it flip-flopped when he was out, and you know, between Diesel being the champion, Diesel a great part-time champion, he looks great with the world. He looked great with the world title.
What?
Just Diesel. I just. Kevin Nash.
He looked good with the world title.
He did. I mean, yeah, Kevin Nash is a
7-foot
solid
dude, long black hair, Diesel. He had the jackknife. He looked good with the world title.
Drop you from a skyscraper. That man's so tall. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But again,
Unless you're the Giant in WCW catching one of those jackknives. Do you remember when you dropped him on top of his head?
oh yeah, almost killed him.
Yeah.
Neat, thanks.
But
But again, they had such a hard time having somebody to hold the title for that long. Again, Bret Hart had a lot of personal issues with the company. Then you had Shawn Michaels, who just had a lot of personal issues in general. He was one of the hardest working world champions of all time. Literally,
You talking?
Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
Shawn Michaels, once he got that belt, basically, because of the contract he was under, he was doing so many house shows as world champion. It was ridiculous. They were on tour for a year and a half. He was doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows.
Damn.
And I think it just wore him right into the ground because of the workload. Had they not had that kind of workload, Shawn Michaels is probably the guy you want to keep the belt on for a good 4 years.
Just a sexy boy.
He's just he's not your boy toy.
No, he's not.
he's one of those guys, too, who... Rollins is no Shawn Michaels.
Right.
I mean, I like Rollins a lot, and I know he's been making an ass of himself for a while now, and he apparently has been red-pilled or blue-pilled or whatever it takes to make you a corporate hag.
Right.
But he's done it. But he was a champion during a lull period. And those ratings and like falling returns on ticket sales,
Yeah.
I don't think that should be seen as a reflection of just the champ. There's a whole product at
Yeah,
play.
yeah.
There's a
exactly.
whole product. That's what they keep putting
Yeah.
around the horse around his neck there. Yeah.
But and Shawn Michaels was kind of the same when he was champ. We can all agree that he's, I mean, absolutely a top 3, top 5 guy in the history of wrestling.
Yeah,
period.
in terms of performance.
But
Yeah.
during his world title run, the product itself.
It
Not,
really
not,
well. It was
not the
tough.
best.
NWO showed up.
Oh,
So
that
how
was
do
the
you-
same time period, wasn't it?
Yeah. How
Right.
do you battle
yeah.
NWO when you've got a clown and a garbage man and a hockey player wrestling each other? It's just two different products. Again, NWO and WCW appealed to the fan who's kind of like us now. We're sick of the clowniness of it all, sick of the disingenuine product, and they wanted something real. And now, here comes NWO with it's just about the realest thing you can get with the biggest heel turn in the history of wrestling.
Yeah.
And
When you spray paint on somebody's back, it changes the game.
indeed, you never saw that before. And again, I think it was a different product, and it was very hard to keep a steady championship on somebody because the workload, the way that the product was going, and I think there's, like you mentioned before, an oversaturation of championship type talent. How do you manage that? I mean,
Right.
think of all the top champions within 5 years, and it's easy it's easier to think of on a larger time scale because of how much good wrestling there was. But in 4 years, you had Bret the Hitman Hart, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and Triple H.
Good Lord.
Wow.
All top championship material champions.
That was in a 4-year
Who they had.
window?
What's that?
That was about a 4-year window? Yeah,
It was
that's
a
true.
4 or 5 year window.
Good
Wow.
Lord, yeah.
From 1996, which was WrestleMania 12, you had Bret Hart dropping it to Shawn Michaels. Then WrestleMania 14, Shawn Michaels dropping it to Stone Cold. WrestleMania 15, Stone Cold over The Rock. But they had that time period where Stone Cold left. The Rock kind of took over the reins. Then he feuded up against Triple H. Then you also had Mankind in the mix.
I was just going to say, yeah,
So-
keep adding to that list. Holy crap.
But then again, but even so, they managed to pull it off because they had the talent. They had everybody loved their product. But you got to go back to how do you keep the belt on just one guy? You got to keep it interesting. And at the time, it fit the time period where you could have title changes quickly like that because you captivated an entire audience. So it worked for the time, but you're never going to be able to keep at that time a title on somebody for.
Well, actually in America, but one of the big draws for a lot of people to watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, they still do some long-term championships. Okada has quietly in the last, it's not that quiet for super fans, but for American fans who don't follow Japanese stuff, he's like a 5 or 6 time NJPW or IWGP world champion at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He had that amazing go around with Omega for 3 or 4 matches.
Yeah.
He's been up there with Tanahashi.
Solid
He's
matches.
he's been up there with run down the list right now. There's
Atami,
there's
Tanahashi,
Ibushi.
Omega.
There's a whole laundry list. And for Japanese fans, that group of people would absolutely compare in terms of skill and popularity in that region to the group of people you're talking about from the late 90s in American wrestling.
Right.
Yeah, I dig this long reign, and I also would like to kind of throw on the idea. I don't need the champ there every week. I think that's tied to that oversaturation. It's that they become a workhorse, and that's fine to slap the belt on them, but I don't think I need to see him every night. I'd like to see him every couple weeks. I'd like to see him at the pay-per-views because I'm like, oh, it's defense for a reason. I'm all about it. And with the New Japan Pro Wrestling, the championship means something over there. The IWGP Heavyweight, the IWGP Intercontinental, the IWGP Junior, the IWGP American. Each of those holders of that title, they are champions of athleticism and of their sport. And that is something that is missing with the WWE, and I feel like that's something that has been missing for years, because you can slap the belt on anybody, but that does not make the star.
Right.
With these people who are tried and true and push their asses to the limit with the IWGP, that is a title that I want to buy. Like, straight up truth, no lie, I've been looking at replicas. Why? Because I'm interested in that belt, because it holds significance, it holds meaning, it holds esteem. And even aside with that, they don't just replace it with a new color or a new design every person who holds it. That IWGP Heavyweight Championship has been passed down from person to person, has blemishes, has marks, has stains, has blood, sweat, tears, energy.
It's like the 10 pounds of gold that NWA still has in rotation. That's the one Harley Race used to hold. That's the one from way back. Oh, yeah. It looks almost silly in 2019, but if you're a long-term fan, you know that belt. That thing's been around for 50, 60 years.
Right.
Easy.
And that significance, that dynasty, that air, that elegance, that support, that shows that sport has significance because of what it comes from, a lineage of strength, a lineage of champions, and I dig that.
Right.
And I mean, Okada, man, is he a champ? And yeah, I would echo those same sentiments, Davison, as the idea of having those folks along the lines of who you said for 4 years running. We go through the list in the last 10 years of WWE.
Right.
And those folks are not Hall of Fame material. All of them. Not all of them. Excuse me. Nothing against them.
You know a few who are, though. AJ Styles, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, who also happen to be former IWGP World Champions.
Good point.
Yep.
Very good point. I mean, AJ Styles, and I have grown to appreciate and love him for his in-ring ability, and to make, as you said about Daniel Bryan Danielson, that make everyone look good and make everyone a part of that match, and just challenge and push everybody to that limit, and then also showcase what their skill set is. I think that's something that is lacking with jobbers. I feel like, not to say anything wrong against jobbers, but a fair amount of the folks who come in, showboat, don't. There's like there are quick squashes. I guess the idea is like what's his name? Sami Zayn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sami Zayn is now a jobber, stellar wrestler.
God, that makes me so mad. He was so hot when he was in NXT. Do you remember his match? It was his very first match in America when he joined NXT. Why am I not remembering his name? The Japanese rock star that's on SmackDown. He's the Intercontinental Champion.
Oh, you're talking
Nakamura,
about
Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yeah.
His match when he debuted on NXT against Sami Zayn was easily one of my favorite matches from the last
Broke
5 or 6
Samoa
years.
Joe's jaw.
God.
And with one of those running knees,
Yeah.
smacked him in the jaw.
Yeah. No, Sami Zayn is next world for me, but that's how WWE treats talent, I guess. T, you said a thing a couple minutes ago about it being special when champions aren't on every single week. I 100% agree. I think the psychology of that is interesting too. Think about any workplace where people are pissed that they're in the trenches grinding it out for 40 hours, 50, 60 hours a week. And when the boss shows up every couple days or so and says, hey, what's up? How much do you hate that guy? How much do you want that guy's job? You know? So it makes me think of Magnus, and I still can't remember his name that he uses now. I'm just going to keep calling him Magnus forever. He's the NWA champion. He's kind of pulling the old school thing where he comes out, he's still in the suit. He's still cutting promos like Flair used to way back in the day. And that's what makes me think of, making a smooth segue here, there's an old man named Nick Bockwinkel that used to wrestle in AWA way back in the day.
Yeah.
I believe he was an NWA champion as well. He was the smooth talking, suit wearing, intellectual guy who would just kind of show up once in a while. And it made him seem incredibly special. It was almost like they're bigger than the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't need the show to get over. They just show up and they're over.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like there's prestige to them. Like, holy crap, this is somebody special.
Mm-hmm. They've proven themselves already.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And so when I think of Bockwinkel, I immediately think of, again, I've been watching wrestling since 82 or something.
Yeah.
And there was a boom going on back then. You could watch Texas Wrestling, WCCW, on ESPN 5 days a week.
Wow.
You could watch AWA with the Ganyas out of Minnesota 5 days a week, ESPN. There was NWA over on Turner Broadcasting. There was WWF. It was all over the place. Bockwinkel stood out to me because he was kind of like an older Flair. It seemed like Flair was kind of almost cribbing on his style in a sort of a way. And somebody who caught my attention at that young age, I think at the time was one of the youngest world champions in any of the different organizations. It actually wound up being Kurt Hennig, who's Mr. Perfect.
Oh, wow, yeah.
He took the title off of Bockwinkel when he was maybe 21 or 22.
Wow.
Super young. And of course, his dad, Larry the Axe, was, neck deep in AWA history. He's another one of those old guys who's been around forever, has a ton of clout. But seeing Kurt Hennig swoop through and take that title, it really seemed like a passing of the torch, ring of the new guard.
Yeah.
Because then things started kind of moving towards the youth movement. I don't think they're the ones who launched that. They may have just been a byproduct of the motion towards a younger product anyway. And we're about to talk about people who were never big world champions. I guess we should probably clarify then. Are we talking about certain organizations, or are we talking about the big recognizable ones like WWE, NWA?
I would say more of the big recognizable ones because, like you said, back then that was a huge deal. But it was towards the middle of the 80s, late 80s, where it was clear that as territories started to die down, the two main products were WCW and WWF.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a case could be made for a lot of those territories when it comes to people who were never the top guys in their, there could be a case made for all of them, but I'm not sure how many of the people who listen to this podcast are that knowledgeable of just how
We
deep
can
wrestling
inspire
is.
someone.
How dare you
I would
insult our audience of 4?
Sorry.
I remember to this day.
Sorry.
Yeah, you better apologize to all 4 of them. Take them out to dinner. I remember when Hennig won the belt from Bockwinkel, and it was like the perfect old school angle where he'd been a good guy kid wrestling the.
Yeah.
I think Bockwinkel wasn't really a heel. He was just like an old guy who'd been doing it forever. He was well respected.
Right.
Hennig had a really subtle heel turn when he won the belt. I remember he pulled a roll of quarters out of his tights, and Bockwinkel was giving him just a basic back to belly suplex. You just pick him up, drop him on the back basically. While he had him up, the referee went behind him for some reason and he punched him in the head with the roll
Yeah.
while the ref was behind. And I don't know if they meant it, but this is the part that always still gets me. The thing broke in his hand, and so Corey just like shot all over the place. And it was such an awesome detail because it just seemed like you got to hit somebody hard for that to happen. So
Right.
maybe they gigged it. I don't know. But that was just some of that like old school detail that, again, 30 years later, I'm still thinking about.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Still stuck in your craw.
Yeah.
It's good storytelling.
It's a cool
That's
visual.
what it is. It's good theater right there. That's
So what do you think? What happens when a kid is that, he's putting it together, he's running the title in a big organization, and then Vince gets a hold of him and brings him in, and we all start seeing all of these promos for this guy who can make a backwards basketball shot from half court, who can throw darts at a bar and just get, bullseye after bullseye.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. He can swim fast.
right.
He can roller skate. He can hula hoop. He does all of it. Do you think that hamstrung him? Is that why he wasn't champion? Did they turn him into too much of a cartoon character right away?
You know what? And I don't disagree with you. I think it was Henning's natural ability to be perfect. And I've heard it before, and I'd have to agree. I don't ever see him screw up
No.
or make a mistake in the ring.
No way.
And
Bret Hart commented on him, I believe. Bret Hart had an interview in which somebody asked him, what are your thoughts on like somebody that you felt comfortable working with always and forever? And he's like, yeah, I can wrestle Kurt Hennig for an hour and a half and then and still be fine afterwards without any hesitation or any concern or any worry.
yeah, and another thing to consider too, trust in somebody.
Trust.
I don't think. I mean, if you were gonna go up against somebody, technically speaking, you had no reason not to trust Kurt Hennig
Yeah.
because he took care, and he also made you look really freaking good too.
Yep.
The way he sold things
Yeah.
was there's a little bit of flair to it, but it wasn't over the top, And
He's been majorly influential on Ziggler and the way Ziggler sells.
yeah, absolutely. And again, he was a great Intercontinental champion back when the Intercontinental title really meant something.
Yep.
That was my favorite title.
yeah,
That-
exactly.
That's something that holds significance, holds as a standard bearer for
The
me.
work rate title.
Right, exactly. And I don't think at the time, I think he was, pun intended, he was the perfect Intercontinental champion.
Absolutely perfect.
I think you could make an argument that him and Bret Hart would have had a great world title feud. I think
Yeah.
between the two of them, if the company would have been shifted in that light, if it would have, if the creative minds, in another world, that you could easily see them going up against each other for world title.
He's one of those guys that stands out to me because I don't remember him getting, I'm sure he did at some point, but like some big bad injury. I don't remember him being one of those guys that got derailed for a while. But
No.
for some reason, he got shifted over. We were talking about your favorite Royal Rumble when Flair went from number 3 and won the title.
Yeah. He took on more of a managerial.
Exactly. He got moved into the stable with Bobby the Brain, but he wasn't wrestling under him. He was like his second in command as a manager.
Yeah.
I don't know why that happened. He
It was
wasn't past his
strange
prime.
because he ended up putting Flair out of the WWE.
Oh, is that
on,
right?
On a taping of Monday Night Raw. It was back when they did Monday Night Raw at the Manhattan Center, and it was a career match, Mr. Perfect versus Ric Flair,
Oh, okay.
and they had a great match on Monday Night Raw. But yeah, Mr. Perfect ended up retiring Flair.
Pause.
Yeah.
You said that they had a career match that sent Flair home on a Raw?
On a Monday Night Raw. Yeah.
Gosh.
I got the DVD. Actually, Jake and Lauren have it, so I'll let you borrow it.
All right, sounds
It's
Two
pretty
all-time,
dope.
like 2 all-time greats. I don't know. That's just an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
Knowing everything we know about them now.
Exactly, and yeah, it was a really good match actually, and it was, that's the thing. I think Perfect would have made a really good champion had the spotlight of WWE been pointed in that direction. But I think it came down to Yokozuna was just such a force at the time. I think unfortunately Hennig got pigeonholed into that we're focusing on younger guys, and Hennig wasn't
wasn't
old by
old.
any means,
Nah.
but he was a part of that 80s, that mid 80s going into the, when 95 shifted and Hogan ran to WCW,
Yeah.
WWF was like, the new generation, we're focusing on new guys. We want to get rid of these old guys.
See, that's the thing is when they say old guys, I think they mean old product. You know,
old product, and that's what it was.
He feels like one of those toys that still works perfectly well, but Vince was just onto some new toys.
It was the same reason why he wanted Macho Man to do commentary and not wrestle. And it's like Macho Man was still perfectly able, and he was the freaking Macho Man. And as soon as he left WWE, he was never the same to me. I never saw him as I don't know. I think that just kind of killed it for me. Up until he was always the Macho Man for his entire time. But as soon as he went to WCW, I was just like, now I just kind of feel like this is old. Wow. Now you're watching Hogan. Now you're watching Macho Man. Now you're watching. It's like
recycled.
Yeah, recycled. And
well, what's his name? Vince said that same sentiment a little while ago, as before NXT came on air and before they switched over to Fox. There was this sentiment or this sense in the air, or this idea that Vince had thrown out there, is that, oh, I want new stars. And that's why he brought up Ricochet and whoever else, the other guy that
he brought up Aleister Black, and in his infinite wisdom, he brought up Gargano and Ciampa, who used to be DIY.
Yeah.
And they'd been in a blood feud for a year up to that point.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know what I need?
Yeah.
Give me DIY. And they're all like, no, please don't do this. And he threw them together as a tag team on Raw and totally undid a year of probably the best planned, most long-term, like, believable, intense angle that NXT had.
And that was right after, I think, an NXT takeover where they tore down the house.
Yeah, like 2 days later.
Yeah, like, they made it. They made it to the big time.
Give me some new toys. Triple H, give me some new toys. Like,
right.
Please, Vince, I've been building this company for 5 years. Please don't do this to me.
Right. You're breaking my balls.
Give me the DIY.
You're breaking my balls.
DIY. Yeah. I want that team.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. I think Vince just went ahead and pissed in the own pot, and it wasn't anything that Perfect did. It was just Vince losing interest, and then he was a little bit of damaged goods going into WCW just because the shine had been worn off.
Yeah,
he certainly wasn't going to be a champion there.
And we were talking about how there were so many different champions within that 5-year time frame, and another person that stands out for me too, who easily could have been the top guy considering how many people loved him, was Razor Ramon. Mm-hmm. And I think he could have gotten the shaft. I think he got the shaft mainly. Well, one, it's possible that he didn't get the shaft, and he knew what he was basically expecting to get being in the clique. You know, when you're dealing with Razor, when you're dealing with being the number 2 guy in the WWF, and you've got the Intercontinental title, your main goal is to get to the World Championship. But being that you're in the clique, working with Shawn Michaels and Big Daddy Cool Diesel, and those two are now feuding for the world title, how do you get that?
Yeah,
how do you achieve that? So I always wondered if he knew that was never going to be a possibility, if he didn't really think that far ahead, or if it wasn't really his dream to be the world champion. But I think easily, if you spun it correctly, he could have been a good world champion as a face.
You know what I just thought of? Remember when we were talking about one of the examples of Bret Hart being one of the best was that Wembley match against the British Bulldog, Davey Boy? And Davey Boy won the match, and it would have been easy for common fans to go, wow, he beat the Hitman. Maybe he'll be champion soon.
Yeah.
But we're like, no. He just made him look like $1 million. Hitman is the next champion. Think about, it wasn't the first ladder match like they always say, but the one that they call the first ladder match.
Yeah.
With HBK. Was he called HBK at the time? Yeah, he would have been.
Yeah, it was SummerSlam 1995.
Yeah. So it was Razor and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels loses. Correct?
That was WrestleMania 10.
Okay, I'm thinking of the one.
WrestleMania 10 was the very first ladder match between Razor and Shawn Michaels, in which Razor won.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is there actually was one before that. It was either like a house show or a television show, but they always call the one at WrestleMania the quote unquote first one. But that seems to me like a parallel where the guy who won, Razor, wasn't the one who was going to go on. It was the guy who sold like a flopping fish.
Yeah.
Who went on.
But
and won the title.
But it was strange because then they had a rematch for the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam 95. That was when Shawn, and I don't know why it's always stuck out, but Shawn Michaels wore that like seafoam green.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, seafoam green domino looking.
Yeah, it's like the only time. It was ugly. It's like the one time you wore it.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the sexy boy.
It was slightly less sexy boy that day.
Folks, still not your boy toy.
A little less sexy boy.
But still, Razor put him over. Mm-hmm. And that may have been the proper time to give Razor a boost. With Shawn as Intercontinental title, But again, this was the time frame of WrestleMania 11. This was after WrestleMania 11. Shawn Michaels was a babyface again. At the time, Big Daddy Cool was a world champion, and he was kind of pitting up against the big guys, Vader, Psycho Sid,
Right.
And so if there was ever a time to give him a boost, that probably would have been the prime time to do it.
Yeah.
Because after that, I mean, Razor wasn't at. Oh yeah, he was at WrestleMania 12. He had. No, I don't think Razor Ramon was at WrestleMania 12.
I'm not sure. I have to admit that whole period, like I was still watching wrestling,
yeah.
but I think I had shifted and was paying most attention to NWA, WCW.
Were you okay?
Because that was that period where I just wasn't really into Yokozuna's huge dude. There wasn't
Right.
like I said, I'm a work rate person. I don't
Right,
care about
exactly.
7-foot tall guys
Yeah, I'm a
kicking
work
each
rate
other in the
person.
chest every
No
30
doubt.
seconds. Or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Big boot.
I kind of missed. Oh look, it's another big boot.
Yeah.
It's another big boot. What do you know? Yeah. So
No,
no, I'm missing certain information I think from that era.
And another guy, and you're talking about work rate wrestlers, and T was bringing up a wrestler too that never achieved world championship status, but another guy you could definitely see, even more recently, with his time in the WWE as well.
Yeah, Goldust is somebody that, he had won some WCW stuff, but I mean, come on, the man is known for who he was as Goldust in WWE. And to my understanding and knowledge, the man had not held the gold. And it's somebody that had my attention through and through, from introduction till even now, where he is in AEW. But the man has consistently proven to be an attention grabber, a
Right.
work rate man. He consistently shows up and consistently keeps people on their toes. Someone that I surely should have had the belt, should have ran with it, should have had some attention, spotlight on him for many years. Because honest to goodness, it would have been wonderful.
There was again in
Really
another
would
world
have.
they could have built him up properly. 'Cause he was another great Intercontinental Champion.
Oh yeah.
When they put the gold leather on the title to
Yeah.
reflect his. But again, it was one of those things where back when the Intercontinental Champion was someone of unique stature, someone who stood out in their own way. There used to be something really special about the unique factors of being Intercontinental Champion. Anytime that belt was on somebody, there was something special about him.
Yeah.
There was something really unique that separated him from the rest of the pack, but they hadn't yet reached that level of main event status yet. And I feel that's kind of something that's missing today too. It's just kind of hodgepodge. There's nothing super unique about Intercontinental Gold.
Yeah,
Right.
they keep playing hot potato with each and every one of these titles, and
Yeah.
it's a pass on whoever decides to get it now without it seemingly any coordination or understanding. I mean, bless his heart, Seth Rollins, but the dude it's not up to him to carry the company on his shoulders. I fear that's as we said a little bit ago, that he is taking on the mantra of that when honestly he needs to go what AJ Styles is saying, which is like, hey, I'm here.
Right.
I'm working. I can prove through in the ring what I need to do.
Right.
And Davison, you even had a wrestler as well who's probably one of the most legendary wrestlers of all time, who I can't even think of any major titles that he held.
I can think of a few. Well, yeah, I just want to touch real quick before we shift over the Goldust thing. Nobody had. I mean, clearly there have been a lot of people who had gotten heat, but in
Yeah.
that particular time, imagine in like the second year of the Goldust character with all that nuclear heat he was generating.
Yeah.
If he would have been the world champion, and if he had won by duplicitous means, cheated somebody out of the title, preferably like
Yeah.
kissing them when they didn't want to be kissed, freaking out, give them the small package,
Yeah.
That's why I got
Yeah.
Dustin Reynolds.
intentional use of small package.
I got
So, I mean-
I got so much props to Dustin Reynolds for doing that.
As a
because
Texas boy, holy shit.
he, as a Texas boy, and just actually one time he was at there was this old place where back where I grew up in Mount Clemens. I didn't grow up in Mount Clemens, but it was nearby. It was the Gibraltar Trade Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super lit. I mean, they always had sweet stuff going on there. But one time Goldust was there, and he was sitting in this throne. It was so hilarious. Like, we walked by him, and
Hell yeah.
he was sitting in the throne, and we were like, "Hey, Goldust!" And he looks up at us, and we're like, "Suck it!" And all he did was and I know you guys can't see me right now, but he just did the side of his face, lip up, snarl with the face paint, and it was just so perfect because he totally sold it for us, and we were like, that's awesome.
So fun.
He just gave us the sneer look, and we were like, that's freaking dope.
Still real to me.
And again, super talented in the ring.
Right.
Really good wrestler.
Well, and that's the thing I was going to piggyback from was, well, not only was he super talented, but I think that there would have been a lot of fear. How would it look if we made this guy our champion?
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I mean? Especially at that time. And then the guy I'm bringing up for a very different reason. How would it look if this guy was our champion?
Right.
I've always been a huge fan. Arn Anderson.
Right.
Try to imagine Arn Anderson as a world champion. It seems ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But just think about it. Was there anybody around that era, and I'm talking early 80s, let's say late 80s,
Yeah.
who was a better in-ring technician, who could be more dependable or put on better matches as a tag team guy, who did a better job of selling his opponent's offense, who was a better talker? He was absolutely the full package,
Yeah.
except he looked more like a professional bowler than a
Yeah.
professional.
I was trying to figure out how would you describe him, and you could see one Arn Anderson
Yeah.
in every bowling alley.
That's
At
how.
times, multiple.
At times, and multiple.
Yeah,
Same
he's
team.
more likely to be the Budweiser Pin Master Champion of '87
doubt.
than any kind of World Wrestling Champion for sure.
Catch him in the ring, you're in trouble. Catch him in strike ball, man, he's going home with some loot.
Yeah.
Straight
And so, I mean, let's look at his influence, though. I mean, he's the guy who came up with the spine buster.
Right.
Nobody was doing that. And now let's think of the iconic people. I mean, of course, it's gotten watered down like most moves, like the DDT has gotten watered down. But I mean, from Triple H to Batista to all these other big main eventers,
Yep.
the spine buster became a big thing. The Snake was already making the DDT a thing, but arguably, I would say I liked Arn's DDT better because he
Yeah.
really dropped people on the top of their head as opposed to that kind of pancake out that
Yeah,
the,
the front of their
that
face.
Jake was doing. Yeah. He came up with the Gourd Buster. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
It's that face first. You just drop them on their face from the suplex position.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was Arn Anderson. He was in the Four Horsemen through
Yep.
almost all of their incarnations.
Right.
Like, just a massively influential career.
Yeah.
And then getting into backstage with WWE eventually and coaching and now into AEW coaching.
Yeah.
Super influential guy. So here's what I wanted to talk about. What if this dude had been born 20 years earlier? And he was wrestling a young Flair. He was wrestling the Bockwinkel's and the Vern Gagnes.
I was
and-
going to say, he'd very much be on the level of Vern Gagne.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. He just seems like I've heard people talk about him. You know, well, that guy is just a Viking, and if he'd been born 400 years ago, he'd be perfectly within his element. But now he's in prison for being a mass murderer. Arn Anderson could have been a wrestling
Yeah.
champion 30 years earlier.
And I would agree with that because think about when Arn Anderson was coming up. What was the big thing? Big frickin' jacked up dudes.
Yep.
That was the new fad. They were like, we need frickin' strong, huge dudes.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, Bruno Sammartino, excellent. He was in excellent shape, but that guy was like concrete. Okay,
Yeah.
you look at his build. He was just a beefy dude. He wasn't like chiseled and roided out and glistening. He was
Nah.
a big, hairy Italian dude who was super talented in the ring
Yep.
and had a great physique
Voice
to
just
him.
changed a second ago.
Forget about it. And
A little grossed out. Think
Yeah.
about all that chest hair. Fuck. It's no wonder his finisher was a bear hug. People tapped out not because of
Right,
the
no
rib
doubt.
crusher.
Get me out of this
They didn't want
mother
the
thing.
hair in their face. Like, dude, let me out of here. Choking on that shit.
But yeah, he had a long title run too. But that was back when, long title runs were expected. They were given to guys.
Yeah.
Not given to guys, but they were, they were rewarded for their hard work, and people saw the value in them as well. And
Yeah.
again, I think Arn Anderson would have been on that same level of like Vern Gagne and Nick Bockwinkel because he had, it wasn't necessarily about the physique, it was the mentality of who you were and how you were, and he was very old school in that sense. But
Yep.
unfortunately, the time he was in his heyday, sadly, you just had a lot of muscular big guys, and that's when the shift of wrestling turned, and you can make it.
Look at all that beef.
Yeah, basically, it just the culture changed.
Yeah.
And he was on the wrong side of that, and he still had success.
Yeah.
But again, how do you justifiably put the title, the world title, on a guy like that when you've got dudes
You
like...
don't. Well, so he was the TV champion quite a number of times.
Yeah, no
in
doubt.
WCW.
TV champion, man. Oh man.
And so that's the guy that comes out because their world champion's not on TV every single week.
Right.
They had the TV champ who was, and that was Arn. And I guess that was their way of saying, like, he's not as handsome as our world champ, but, he's here every week.
He shows up to work, so we'll.
He may not be the champion, but he's here.
Right. Now, what he was, though, was a chronic tag team champion. He and Tully Blanchard when they were in the Four Horsemen. And they had classic rivalries with the Rock and Roll Express, with the Road Warriors, you name it. And then there was some contract stuff going on, and I have to look more into it. But Tully Blanchard got real pissed off. I think he and Dusty Rhodes maybe had some bad blood when Dusty was doing the booking in NWA. That's why the Brainbusters wound up in WWF. Arn and Tully came over for just like a year or two.
Yeah.
And I think they were world champions in WWF as well. And then they went back, or at least Arn did, to go rejoin the Four Horsemen. But speaking of that, think of the Brainbusters. So that would have been Tully and Arn, late 80s. Think about the revival today.
Right.
With Scott Dawson and I can't remember the other guy's name. Yeah. Apparently he's not terribly important. But Scott Dawson, you put him in a ring with Arn Anderson from that era. I remember the first time I saw Scott Dawson wrestle on NXT, and he's another guy like, what the hell? He's not going to have a career. He doesn't look like much. But he moves like Arn. When he drops an elbow, he snaps it. When he does that, like, laces of his boots across your eyes, it looks like you're going to bleed out of your face, and you're mad at him for doing it.
That's something I kind of miss about wrestling, too. Remember back in, like, the late 80s or something, you'd have a match where the guy would have his opponent on the ground, and he would approach his opponent in such a way where, and quite literally, this is what commentators would say, they measured him. They would set themselves up in the way they take their time with the move and just drop it on a guy, and it would just it looked like it really freaking hurt.
Yeah.
They would just and that would cause a reaction from the commentators. Oh, he measured him with that one. That's a term that was not used loosely. It was a term that was used literally because they would approach their opponent, set up, and drop something on him that really just hit its mark.
Yeah.
And that was the entire point, was to literally sell the fact that they just this dude just dropped a fist right on your face.
Another good example of that was Ronnie Garvin, Hands of
yeah.
Stone Ron Garvin.
Yeah.
Kind of methodical, but he was like, when he punched you, you got punched. He came up with that awesome move, one of my all-time favorite wrestling moves, the Garvin Stomp. And Randy Orton eventually took it, but the Garvin Stomp is he'd body slam you or whatever. You're laying on your back, and his opponent would have their arms and legs out like they're doing a snow angel, effectively. He would stand by their head and do a jumping stomp on their face. He'd move along. He'd stomp on their hand.
Right.
He'd stomp on their bicep. He'd stomp on their stomach, their knee, their ankle, the other ankle.
Yeah.
Like move all the way around the body, stomp on their face. And it took him a while. He measured every one of those things.
Right,
and
exactly.
Then Orton eventually did it. And I'm not a fan of Orton, but he's another guy that when he does that methodical approach to moves, he does bring some of that 80s juice with him.
Yep, exactly. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, he had inspiration from his dad as well, and that's just how it was back then.
Yeah.
It was a very different style of wrestling. So, Arn Anderson, again, like you said, 20 years earlier, he would have been one of the legends. And I still think he's legendary to this day. I just don't think he was ever in a situation to be heavily pushed into the limelight for an extended amount of time, which was expected of champions back then, based on his physical presence.
Yeah, this wasn't one of my choices, but he's worth a mention. I'm surprised none of us said it. Ted DiBiase.
Yeah, Ted DiBiase was the go-to would-be champion heel of the 80s.
Yeah.
How many times did that guy have an opportunity to win the world title and never did? But again, he was a $1 million champion. He had his own belt. He was the first person, I think, in wrestling history to be like, F you. I don't need your dumbass title. I got my own title. And it's mine.
Taz did the fuck the world title later.
Yeah,
Taz
exactly.
had FTW, but that was way after the fact.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But still, and very good point. Ted DiBiase, multiple. I mean, he was in the finals for the World Heavyweight Championship tournament at WrestleMania 4 against Macho Man Randy Savage with Andre in his corner.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there is a very distinct possibility he was going to walk out with that, especially because he scored a bye in the tournament. So he wrestled one less match than Macho Man did. And
did we just mess up? Do you remember when Andre beat Hogan on Saturday Night's Main Event, I think it was, and there was all that hijinks about the Hebner twins? They pretended there was only one Hebner referee. Do you remember this angle?
It rings a bell, but
The whole idea was they basically screwed Hogan. It was hilarious. So Dave Hebner and Earl Hebner are twin brothers who've been referees for like 40 years.
Yeah.
And I think like one of them would ref in WWF and the other in NWA.
Yeah.
So they never crossed paths. On this particular night, they finally put the two of them in the ring together, and one of them was pretending to be the other ref and was paid off by DiBiase. And then they got in each other's faces and were fighting. But the funniest thing in the world was Hogan's promos after the fact, lamenting his loss of the title.
Yeah.
He was like, DiBiase, he put all this money into it. He got him plastic surgery. He perfected it. He brought it right down to the same fingerprints, brother. They're identical. That's how much he wanted to screw me.
Oh, my God.
Talk about some early wave Trumpism shit.
Yeah, right.
Hogan trying to spin that. But
that's what led to that, though.
But my question was, didn't Andre hand the title over to DiBiase?
Yeah,
or was that not recognized as actually being a champion?
You're absolutely right. But when he did that, if you'll recall back in the Attitude Era, McMahon won the Royal Rumble and won the World Championship. And then he wanted to give it away. And then they were like, nope, you literally just vacated the title. You can't hand a title down to somebody no matter what. And that's what McMahon tried to do. And which is funny because it's like, hey, dumbass, you just broke one of your own rules that you set. But
wild card.
Yeah, but that's exactly what happened as soon as DiBiase paid Andre to get the title. He got the title, tried passing it to DiBiase, and because he did that, he literally vacated the title, which led to the tournament at WrestleMania 4.
That's what it was.
And then DiBiase paid Andre to eliminate Hogan from the tournament, which is exactly what he did.
Right.
It was a double disqualification between Andre and Hogan.
Okay.
Which led to the bye. Or there may have been another match that led to the bye that DiBiase got in. But yeah, regardless, DiBiase, another, and he was a part of the Royal Rumble in '92, but he was also eliminated in like 30 seconds by British Bulldog.
Yeah.
Bulldog and DiBiase were the first two in the ring. Bulldog clotheslined DiBiase over the ropes, and he was gone. And as DiBiase was walking back, that's when Flair came out.
Okay.
But yeah, he had ample times to win the world title, and he had title matches as well. But again, just one of those great workhorse guys that you could pit against world champions because he would give you a caliber match, worthy of a world title type match. But he had no problem not being the top guy. He was the top heel. One of the greatest natural heels of all time. Very rare that you'll get guys who are heels all the way through. Even Nikolai Volkov ended up going face after a while. And, he was, again, the top heel in the 80s because he was Russian. And that was his angle. I'm from the USSR, which he wasn't even Russian.
Right.
So, again,
I guess DiBiase and Jake the Snake Roberts kind of had that similarity in that they were seen as being adjacent to the main event, whether they were actually main event or not.
Yeah.
And most people would agree that they never needed, well, that's another topic all into itself, never needed the title to get over. I guess that's a way of saying Hogan apparently needed a title to get over, so that argument's a little weird to me. But
I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But I feel as though Hogan he needed all.
Maybe he did need it.
He did. For him. I mean, that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, Hulkamania was just the runaway train, but would that have happened without? Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, I think the last person we wanted to bring up is somebody that I think arguably, and maybe just the way I look at wrestling, there's no doubt that the world title was in his future, because I think there is a level of showmanship and camaraderie that is shown within the locker room between certain wrestlers. And I feel that there was a lot of leaders in the back, and there was a lot of people that really stood out as being top guys to work with. And I think this one in particular, not only one of the top guys ever, when you're talking about how good he is in ring as a technician, but also as a personality. And I really think if he hadn't passed away, Owen Hart eventually would have had a world title run.
Yeah, I can agree with that. He was definitely a workhorse. He was definitely somebody that put in that energy. He was definitely somebody that was on time and consistent with himself.
And
that
everybody,
Hart family.
and everybody loved him. On top of that, he was a family man.
I could probably pick one person that probably wasn't a big fan of him.
Really?
Yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, okay. I can let you slide with that one.
Yeah,
Because
right.
he legitimately ended Stone Cold's long-term career.
Broken freaking neck.
Yeah.
Oh,
my God. But, but again, think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
The fact that there was that bad blood between, and I know Austin forgave Owen Hart for what he did. Austin made his peace with Owen after his death. But if you think about it, how genius would that be if you gave the belt to Owen as a heel going up against Stone Cold Steve Austin? Especially with that early seated anger, that real heat that they had towards one another. If Owen Hart had grown past the blue blazer phase, which I thought was great, I thought it was fun. It was Owen having fun. It was Owen, just being.
I didn't know much about that. I compared that to Glacier when the WCW was doing their thing. Was that the same kind of vibe?
Well,
I know
Blue Blazer was Owen's original gimmick.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so I think it was Owen's way of breaking out and having fun again and not having to take on role of serious wrestler, like serious business. Owen Hart, he did the gig with Ken Shamrock. He had the thing with Steve Blackman. Man. He had done the Nation of Domination thing. It was him getting back to babyface. And I think an argument could be made that after the Blue Blazer phase, Owen could have set something up between Owen and Steve Austin, because you got to remember, after Owen's death, the dynamic of the entire federation changed. You're talking about one of the longest tenured wrestlers in the federation at the time. Mm-hmm. No plans on leaving, no plans on retiring. He was still wrestling the top of his game. Mm-hmm. They could have easily set something up where Owen turns into a heel again, captures the title, and then him and Austin go at it. That could have stunted The Rock's growth and Triple H's growth.
Word behind the scenes was that Owen, not only was, I don't even think it's arguable, one of the best in-ring performers they had.
Yeah.
Just absolutely beloved by everybody in that company. One of the absolute most popular people back there, always making everybody laugh. Everybody loved him. I don't know that would have translated into, titles per se.
Yeah.
But I know that sent shockwaves not just through the product, but through the entire company when he passed away.
There are people who don't even watch wrestling who, even when I bring it up, I'll be talking about it a little bit, and they're like, "Didn't that guy die?" And they remember because that was a big freaking deal.
Yeah,
that was a major deal. Nobody in the history of sports entertainment or anything had ever just died in the middle of a pay-per-view event. Not on that level.
Right.
Obviously Bruiser Brody was murdered, but that was not as
wasn't
much
during
of
a show.
Exactly, and that it was not on that level before, where a live audience saw somebody die.
Right.
And
New Jack tried a few times to kill people, but they just
oh my God,
they just wouldn't die.
Look at last week's episode. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, but I think a case could easily be made that at least one world title reign could have been in Owen Hart's future.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
What that would have amounted to, who he would have wrestled, I think Stone Cold would probably be the easy person, but again, it depends if they would have even wanted to work with one another, what they would have done. It's all hearsay. Yeah. It's all speculation, because obviously what happened, but you look at how he was multi-time tag team champion, multi-Slammy award winning, former King of the Ring, multi-Intercontinental champion.
Didn't he have that period where he would walk around wearing the crown with like multiple belts over his shoulders, carrying those stupid fucking trophies? Like,
oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And actually, his King of the Ring acceptance speech is hilarious, because that was when the Anvil came back out of nowhere and helped him win the King of the Ring, and he's standing up there with the freaking. He's standing up there with the crown and the cape and the bejeweled staff, and he's like, "I'm the king!" And he's just like,
I'm the king,
demanding people admonish him and bow to him. And he's like, "I'm the king!" And he's just like looking at people like, "Why aren't you praising me right now?"
You know,
he just
the more we've talked about Owen Hart, I think back, and I remember the very first version of the Blue Blazer that swung through. That was Owen's debut into the company.
Right.
Anyway. And I think I was at the age where I was just starting to look into like the tape trading thing from Stampede had a really great reputation at the time for shipping people back and forth from Japan. So the work rate was real cool. And I'd heard about Owen, so I didn't know that was the Blue Blazer until way after the fact. But when I think back, that character was my introduction to, I think even more so than like Steamboat and Savage at WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
I think seeing the way the Blue Blazer moved and how his matches were put together, and he was my introduction to like loving work rate wrestlers.
Right.
Was the Blue Blazer.
And that's the thing that you're touching on is the idea of these folks that are coming in from, you know, IWGP champions or New Japan Pro Wrestling or All Japan Pro Wrestling. They're coming across from other places, showing that they have the work rate ability to get over in a crowd that appreciates, rewards, and celebrates those folks. Not going to say his name, but Pegasus is somebody that stands out.
Yep.
Particularly because of the fact that he was a working man. He consistently pushed. He consistently was there.
And he does does some crazy stuff on the ropes.
Yes.
Super creative that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
Nobody else is attempting to do.
Yeah.
And he's got the guts to do it. And, you know, going forward, I just hope that they start giving more people a look, giving more people opportunities to express themselves. You know, whether or not they want the world title or not, it's one thing. But in the end, it's just about giving them the push that they deserve.
Yeah, I can rattle off a short list of people right now who would be really interesting and probably successful wrestlers who are both strong as characters and tremendous in work rate. I love Ricochet.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could very easily see Ricochet as a world champion on either company.
No doubt.
Yep.
I could very easily see Aleister Black as a world champion on either side.
Big E is on my list.
I love
Big E.
Yes,
Thank
I love
you.
Big E. I love Xavier Woods. I love Kofi Kingston. I wish that it would have been Big E or Xavier Woods that would have gotten that push instead of Kofi, because I mean I love Kofi, Killer Cat. However, I think that the timing of his promo a couple weeks beforehand was like, I've been here 7 years and you ain't give me nothing, and then like 2 weeks later the man had the belt on him.
Yep.
So I think that was crazy interesting timing with the injury of Ali. But I gotta tell you, Big E, Xavier Woods, I'm with you on that list.
Big E Langston, when he was in NXT, he was like the third NXT champion, maybe.
Oh,
I think he won it from Bo Dallas. No, Bo Dallas won it from Big E.
Yeah.
And Big E, I think, won it from Seth Rollins. I think that's the lineage. But he did that 5 gimmick back then. Remember, like in the 80s, you pin somebody and 3's not enough, so you make the ref count to 5.
Yeah.
That was
like
Big E's.
that.
That's
Big E was
great.
doing that shit. So when he came up and he was doing singles, and I remember he was the muscle for Ziggler, and he was running around with AJ Lee and Ziggler at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept going, please let that guy break out. So big, so charismatic, violent, funny. He's got everything. Big E for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's get together again next week. We'll appreciate you guys listening and watching the podcast. Make sure you subscribe. 1049 The Edge. We got new episodes coming out every week. This upcoming recording that we're gonna do is probably good. It'll be the last one for a couple of weeks because we got Thanksgiving coming up.
Turkey.
We got turkey. We got a turkey break.
Genocide.
In place of
Sorry.
while we're celebrating non-genocide,
We'll eat turkey.
because I definitely don't celebrate genocide by any means.
Come on. That's what they all say.
Yeah, the gobbledygook. It's just gonna be 2. It's gonna be 2 hours of the gobbledygook noise.
We could do that.
So that's what you'll get for Thanksgiving. And then we'll be back after that. This next recording, let's get into some of our favorite all-around pay-per-views of all time.
Ooh.
I want to dabble in this because there's a lot of excellent pay-per-views out there that I think if, as a wrestling fan, you've never checked out before, maybe we'll open your eyes to some interesting pay-per-views that really changed the flow of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Awesome.
I dig it.
All right, we'll holler at you guys next week. Thanks for joining the Crucial Squared Circle.